Ghost in the Shell is the 2017 live-action adaptation of the classic anime film directed by Mamoru Oshii, itself an adaptation of a manga created by Masamune Shirow, this time directed by Rupert Sanders of Snow White and the Huntsman. Stars Scarlett Johannson as the Major, a woman whose brain has been placed in a cyborg body without any idea of who she was or what her past was. As the Major, she is placed into Section 9, a public security agency tasked with catching a hacker known as Kuze. As the Major hunts Kuze, she slowly begins to unravel the mystery of who she really is. Now, I personally am a really big fan of the original 1995 Ghost in the Shell anime directed by Mamoru Oshii. It's a landmark film in not only just animation, but in sci-fi storytelling, in the realm of cyberpunk and sort of cyborg sci-fi, sort of as an example of science fiction commenting on what it really means to be human, aspects of trying to discover what the key essence of being a real human is. Now, the original film had a lot of philosophy ingrained into it about asking questions of, if you take away a body and replace it, is the soul really there? Hence the title, Ghost in the Shell. The conscience or the essence of the person, is it really authentic? Is it really their conscience and personality that's being placed into this manufactured or built body by another person or another entity? Or is that personality actually completely manufactured? Is it fake? Is it just a figment of someone else's tampering and controlling? So that's why when it came out, Ghost in the Shell really changed the landscape of what a lot of cyberpunk and science fiction films at the time could be. I mean, we've seen the influence of Ghost in the Shell on the Wachowskis with The Matrix. The Matrix is very heavily influenced by Ghost in the Shell, as has been brought up and spoken about publicly by the Wachowskis, as well as inspiring films such as Dark City and even James Cameron with Avatar. There are a lot of elements of Ghost in the Shell in Avatar, which in a way could kind of hurt this new Ghost in the Shell remake, as a lot of what we've seen in follow-up science fiction films over the years have borrowed from Ghost in the Shell. So we've kind of seen some of these elements before, just in other properties that have really been paying homage to the original Ghost in the Shell. But now Ghost in the Shell has had a live-action adaptation. We're now sort of seeing the original birthplace of some of these ideas, and now they're being reintroduced to a new audience. So some of the new audience members that are going to be viewing Ghost in the Shell for the first, or this interpretation of Ghost in the Shell and the Ghost in the Shell franchise for the first time, they may feel like they've seen some of these ideas and these concepts before, but really a lot of what they've previously witnessed in other films like The Matrix originated from Ghost in the Shell. This is a world that is obsessed with cyber enhancements. We have human beings actively enhancing their bodies with cyber technology, whether it be attaching cybernetic limbs or eyes or any real appendages that could really enhance a person's body. And it sort of starts to beg the question of, how far do you go as a human? Now, this film is absolutely stunning. The film visually is one of the best looking films to be released in 2017. I mean, the film is set in this futuristic version of Tokyo like the original film, but there are elements of sort of Hong Kong and other big cities sort of meshed into it as well. But you really get a sense that this future is really lived in, and it's very believable that this is a real city. And considering so many of the shots of the city are virtually CGI and virtually have been created in a computer, it's just unbelievable what has been able to be accomplished, not only by the visual effects artists on this film, but with some of the practical elements as well as the production design and the work done by the guys at Weta Digital. Everything from even the robo-geishas are just so stunning to look at. I mean, this is a beautiful film that's just been crafted with a lot of love and care in the visual department, and pays a hell of a lot of respect to the original 1995 film, recreating a lot of the scenes and key moments from that film, as well as imbuing a bit of elements from other Ghost in the Shell properties, such as the sequel Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, which wasn't really a sequel, but it was marketed as a sequel in the United States, as well as the television anime adaptation Standalone Complex, and there are elements from Arise, which was an over series or like a mini series, which kind of acted as a bit of a reboot of that franchise. But we get a lot of elements from outside the first Ghost in the Shell film included in this live action adaptation. So we get a bit of, it's not all just a direct adaptation of the first film. So you do get to see some things that aren't quite as familiar to purists of the original 1995 film. But the scenes that are recreated, like the opening making a cyborg, done so beautifully and so respectfully recreated. It's very faithful for Ghost in the Shell fans. For a Hollywood adaptation of an anime, this is probably the most faithful, probably the best anime adaptation we've had so far. There's a lot of love given to Mamoru Oshii's film. Now, Scarlett Johannson in the lead as the Major really gives a great performance, despite feelings that people may have based on her casting in this film, just based on her performance and what she actually brings to the film. She was great as the Major. Like, for what the story demanded of her and what was needed for the story, she fit the story. The story works for the Major in this film. The story serves Scarlett Johannson. Nothing feels out of place in regards to how Scarlett Johannson is cast. For this film, everything kind of comes together and works really well. But even Takashi Kitano as the Chief is really great. You've got a great little supporting cast, but the real standouts are Scarlett Johannson and probably Takeshi. I mean, Batou is played fine, but while we get enough of him on screen, he doesn't steal the show with anything. He's not really a standout player in the film. A lot of the attention is put on Scarlett Johannson as the Major, and we're following very clearly the Major's story. Now, this film is dumbed down from the original film. The original film had a lot of philosophical elements about it. It's less philosophical than the original Ghost in the Shell. The original had a lot of big expository dumps, kind of just explaining a lot of the philosophy of that world, and it wasn't shy about giving you a lot of exposition and telling you what each of the key members of that film really thought about recreating human beings in a cybernetic form. Whereas in this film, it's a lot of that philosophical discussion is put really into the background, so it's not quite as in your face, but you do kind of lose a bit of that magic with what really kind of makes the original Ghost in the Shell stand out as being a landmark film. A lot of people love that film for its philosophical discussions and what it asks of the audience to think about as they're watching. The story is a bit more streamlined. We're more interested in trying to discover more about the Major's past, why she's been recreated in the cyborg form and selected to be in Section 9. Now, the film is a bit slow, which is a bit of a similar complaint that people had with films like Blade Runner. It can be a bit of a staple with cyberpunk films, where we kind of have this sort of slow pace and build to kind of really invest in the world and get to know it a bit more. And for people who aren't fans of that, they might get bored of the film. Whereas I kind of didn't really mind the slower pace, as a lot of films are quite fast-paced these days. I actually didn't mind staying in the world and getting to know the world of this version of Ghost in the Shell. It really just helped to create a bit more depth to what the Major is experiencing and what's happening to her in her life. Now, the villain of the film, Kuze, isn't as well developed as the Puppet Master, who was the villain in the original Ghost in the Shell. He doesn't pose as much of a philosophical dilemma for the Major. Kuze is really there to serve the story of the Major and kind of acts as sort of a key element to her past. There isn't really a deep philosophical backing to his motives, and it kind of a bit more simplistic and streamlines for American audiences, so you kind of do lose a bit of that element of the original film. But I think this is a film that fans of Ghost in the Shell are going to appreciate a lot more than non-fans and just fans of cyberpunk in general. If you enjoy films like Blade Runner or Akira or The Matrix, you're going to get a lot more out of this adaptation of Ghost in the Shell than people who aren't really into cyberpunk and that form of sci-fi. The score is actually really great by Clint Mansell. You got this sort of nice little synth blend going throughout the film. It's not quite as in your face as the original score, but you do get little hints of Kanji Kawai's score from the 95 film, and I mean, Kawai's score is really one of the landmark elements of that original film. Having little segments of his score, it kind of leaves you wanting to hear Kawai's score, and you do get that original Making of a Cyborg opening main theme. You do get to hear that theme a bit more towards the end when the credits start. So it's a bit of a bummer you don't get to hear his score a whole lot, but it gives the chance for Clint Mansell to really let his score stand on its own while still sort of paying homage to what has come before. But as a Ghost in the Shell fan, I really enjoyed this adaptation. I had lowered expectations. The trailers hadn't really grabbed me, but after walking into this with a bit lower expectations than usual, I actually came out really quite fascinated and had a really good time with the film. And I have to say, it is absolutely worth seeing on a big screen. If you've got access to IMAX, go spend a little bit extra to see it on an IMAX screen, or just in any big theater, because this movie begs to be seen on a large format. I mean, watching this film on your phone or on a TV screen doesn't do it justice. The visuals in this film are easily within the best that we've come across this year, so it would be a real disservice to the film if you've missed out on seeing it on a big screen. So I do hope you give it a chance and maybe find something that, even though at the moment it seems that most people are a bit divided on whether they like or dislike this film, but for me personally, I really had a great time just as a Ghost in the Shell fan with this film. But I can definitely see if people aren't Ghost in the Shell fans or aren't fans of cyberpunk, this film might not be for you. It might be a little too slow paced, a bit too ambiguous with where the story is going. Or for Ghost in the Shell fans who want something a bit deeper, more philosophical, you might be a bit let down by the dumbing down of some of the themes of the original film. But just know that Rupert Sanders and the crew really do pay a lot of respect and homage to the original film. So give it a chance. For my final score, I'm going for a 7.5 out of 10 for Ghost in the Shell. Go check it out while it's playing at a theater, see it on a big screen. It's not going to be for everyone, but I do recommend seeing it at least once just to take in the visuals and appreciate the type of film that we don't really get to see. You know, cyberpunk is kind of making a little bit of a comeback, but I think we'll have to wait and see how the box office numbers does with this to really see if this and even Blade Runner 2049 kickstart a cyberpunk renaissance, which I would love, as cyberpunk is a genre I freaking adore, but I definitely know it's not for everyone. We'll see how this film does in the next few days and over the next few weeks. So anyway guys, if you like this review, hit the thumbs up button and comment below. Have you seen Ghost in the Shell? Do you plan to see Ghost in the Shell? Do let me know. If you'd like to see more reviews and content like this, do hit the subscribe button. And that's not all. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter at The Mono Report. Thank you guys, and go enjoy Ghost in the Shell.